Alright, I forgot to say this in the team builder part, I guess, but I was predicting a team of Weavile, Garchomp, Porygon 2, Mega-Altaria, and either Azelf or Drapion, or Vivian or Gallade. So I didn't really do that good of a job predicting the team this week, I guess, since Weavile didn't come and I prepared very heavily for it. Azelf did come and I didn't really prepare that much for it. And I wasn't really expecting him to bring the Garchomp, the Garchomp and the Gliscor at the same time. So I kind of had to prepare accordingly for that. I'm going to pause this really quick. But I knew Victini was going to be really important because Glaciate would OHKO pretty much any Gliscor unless he had a lot of special defense investment. And I know Gliscor typically don't run special defense investment. If I can catch Garchomp on a switch in, it would do a lot of damage to that too. So I know Victini is going to be pretty important this week. Unfortunately, Feint on Breloom is going to be pretty useless as everything gets outsped by +1 Mach Punch, which is obviously going to do a lot more damage than a +2 Feint, which does less damage and is not a fighting type move, so I don't get the boost from it. Granbull's going to be pretty important because Intimidate's going to be able to hurt a lot of his team because it looks very physical. I guess Azelf would more likely be special this week because Drapion, Gallade, and Garchomp are definitely a lot more physical. Porygon 2 is probably going to be offensive. Wouldn't be surprised if it has Charge Beam because he does like to run that. And Gliscor, based on this team build, is probably just going to be defensive because it wouldn't really make sense for Gliscor to also be offensive. Which is good news for me because if he did decide to build differently and had Gliscor as his offense, it could have done a lot to me this week. So the main plan this week was to lead Accelgor because I can get spikes up and it'll do damage to 4 out of the 6 members on his team. And then from there I can either Final Gambit to do a lot of damage or kill something, or Encore something if it decides to try to set up on me for some reason, and go from there. So like I said, I lead Accelgor and he decides to lead Drapion. So right out the gate I feel pretty good about this lead because I outspeed, unless it's Choice Scarfed I guess, but that's also valuable information to gain. So my main plan was to go for spikes turn 1 no matter what, but because he led Drapion, who has less base HP than Accelgor, because I made sure to have a max HP Accelgor this week, I figured that a Final Gambit was a pretty safe play. The only thing that would be able to switch in on his team and not get killed by it were Garchomp and Porygon 2. And it would still do nearly full, or like I think it does like 95% to Porygon 2 or something, which basically forces it to recover and allows me to switch into Breloom and kill it. So the worst case scenario here, I guess, by going for Final Gambit would be if he had a Focus Sash on Drapion, which would be kind of weird, or if he switched into Garchomp. So I just decided to go for Final Gambit, and I get a free kill. Which is good for me because Drapion, like I said in my really long team builder this week, happened to do quite a lot of damage. Poison Dark is good offensive typing for my team, and I didn't want to get Pursuit Trapped or Revenge killed by it with Victini, especially with how important Victini's coverage was this week. So I felt pretty good about that going forward. And now we're basically in a situation where we have to lead again. Basically just shortening this game from a 6-on-6 to a 5-on-5, and now he has to figure out who he wants to lead with again. I'm expecting Garchomp here if it's like a Stealth Rock set. Gliscor could come in and just get a free Protect and try to get its Toxic Orb off. Azelf could come in here, I guess, if it's a Stealth Rock set. I don't really expect Gallade to come in because the way he's used it, it's been more of a Choice Scarf Revenge sweeper. So it doesn't really make sense to switch it in on a set like this. So, as I said, he goes for Garchomp, and I decided to go for Scizor on the off chance that he went for Azelf instead. I guess I didn't really make that super clear, but I had it basically down to a 50-50 between him switching in Garchomp and switching in Azelf, because I figured one of them was probably going to set up Stealth Rocks, and I've noticed that people tend to set up Stealth Rocks anytime there's a Victini on a team, so I planned for that. Unfortunately, I switch out here into Granbull because I predicted either a Stealth Rock or an Earthquake or something, but unfortunately he predicts me and goes for an Iron Head, and that does a lot of damage. I was really surprised by how much damage this actually did, especially at a -1, and calced it, and it looked like to me that it had the role of a 252 attack Garchomp with a Choice Band to increase its attack by 1.5. So to me this thing looked really banded, and it looked like it got like a decent roll on it. So I decided to go for a Play Rough and just get damage on this thing, because a banded Garchomp does a lot to my team, and like I said in the team builder, I needed Granbull to basically come in and nuke something on his team. It had the coverage to do so, and it had the coverage to basically take out one thing on his team, and unfortunately didn't have the speed to take out more than one thing, but I only needed it to nuke one thing. So predicting another Iron Head here to try to kill off the Granbull, I decided to switch into Victini because it's only going to do like 11% or something, and I can get a revenge kill with Glaciate if he switches into something. But he shows that he's not banded, which completely threw me for a loop. Apparently, I don't want to say I miscalced, because the calc did show that banded Garchomp would do 43% to a Granbull at -1, but apparently he just got like very, very, very good rolls on both of those Iron Heads to make it look like he was banded, but he just was probably adamant, I guess. Which seems risky, because a Jolly Victini would outspeed, but unfortunately I don't think I am a banded or Jolly Victini, so I don't want to take another Earthquake here, because like I've been saying all battle, Victini is really important to me. So I make a double here into Breloom, hoping that he just goes for another Earthquake. He does, and it doesn't do very much. Breloom's also pretty important this week, but because I am not going to be able to use it as a feint revenge killer, I'm willing to eat the Rough Skin and Life Orb damage to kill this thing off. So I'm up 5-4, and at this point Azelf is a pretty safe switch in, honestly. I don't want to stay in on an Azelf because I'm definitely not going to outspeed it. It can do a lot of damage with the Side Shock, whatever. Instead he sends out Gliscor, and at this point I figure he's probably not going to go for Earthquake, because he just went for Earthquake with a Garchomp and it didn't do very much damage, so why would he do it with a Gliscor? But I'm predicting a Protect here just to get his Toxic Orb off, because like I said from Team Preview, I think that he's defensive. So I make a risky double here, and luckily it pays off because he does go for the Protect and shows the Toxic Orb. So I calc here because Victini is actually in a good spot, because I know that I outspeed this thing. I wasn't sure if I outsped the Garchomp, but I know that I outspeed this thing, which is important information. So I can overpredict here and try to get something on a switch in, but because I haven't used Special Victini a ton this season, I don't think he was expecting Glaciate, and I don't think he was expecting a Specs Glaciate, and even a Specs Glaciate still had a chance to not kill coming up. But luckily I got a high roll here and was able to OHKO Gliscor, which is a huge relief to my team, because outside of Victini I didn't really have a ton of answers. Like, I had Nidoking too, I guess. But if I did not have a special answer to Gliscor, it could have just sat here and stalled out a lot of my team with some pretty douchebaggy sets that I played against in practice, and that I've seen before, I guess. But yeah, Glaciate, even with the specs Victini with max special attack, was only like a low roll would have done about 90%, I think. And that's assuming that he doesn't really have any special defense investment, so it's a little risky for me to go for that here. But like I've kind of been hinting at, Gliscor was a pretty big pain in my side defensively, so I needed to get to a point where I could revenge kill it with Scizor or Breloom on a switch, even if it did get a low roll and kill me in return. So while this was a risky play, it was one that I felt like I had to make to be able to win. And he sends in Gallade, which A, confirms that it's Scarfed, because you wouldn't send in a Gallade against a Victini if it wasn't Scarfed. And B, confirms that he has something that's probably going to be able to hit Victini pretty well. So while I don't really need Victini anymore, it can still do a little bit of damage to Porygon if I need it to, and it can still do damage to Azelf if I need it to. So I decided that I need Granbull less here. I know Gallade's going to be a physical attacker, so being able to get Granbull on a switch in, get a -1, sack it off, and then be able to get a clean switch into something else seems like a better idea to me at this point than sacking off Victini. So that's the play I go for. I know Underbite's going to die. It shows Earthquake, and then I'm at a point where I can switch in freely against a -1 Gallade. So there's a couple of things I could have switched into here. I don't actually remember offhand if Choice Scarf Nidoking actually would have outsped, but because he was going for Earthquake, I didn't really want Nidoking to take all that damage anyway. So my main option here after calcing was to switch into Breloom here. Oh, that's right. I was trying to remember why I did that, honestly, but I knew that he was Scarfed because that's how he switched in, so defensively Breloom actually took it the best on my team, and I realized at that point that I could get a free Spore off on something. If he switched into Azelf, cool, I guess. If he switched into Porygon 2, it actually would have been amazing, because I'll explain that in a second. If he stayed in with Gallade, it would have also been amazing, because then his Scarfer's asleep, and I can just switch into Scizor and U-turn and get momentum. But this is also, honestly, him switching into Porygon 2 is actually the best thing that could have happened for me on that Spore, because now it allows me a free switch into Scizor, which either allows me to U-turn if he doubles, or get a free knockoff on something. As I said in Team Preview, my #1 goal for this Scizor, even if it died immediately after, was to knock off this Porygon's Violate. I don't want to sit around with this fat-ass duck just holding its Violate and not dying. So if he doubles here, he's taking a super effective knockoff and then probably dying from the next one anyway. If he stays in, then Scizor has accomplished its mission, and finally Scizor knocks off something that's pretty important. That Tri-Attack does a lot of damage. I calced it, and this one was actually a miscalc on my part, because in my head I read 17 even though it clearly said 27. So I thought Victini could live on a double here, so I thought I could get one big chunk of damage off and then sack off Victini, but instead I kind of just sacked off Victini. But that's okay too, because it allows me a free switch into my Breloom here. And as I said from my team build, a Mach Punch will guaranteed kill if he's like below 80%, and I was able to keep Porygon 2 low enough that I was able to revenge kill it here. I'm very happy that I finally got rid of that thing, because it, in practice, Porygon 2 just gave me so much practice, so much practice. It gave me so much hell. And I'm just really glad that I was able to take it out the way that I planned. because I've noticed in my battles lately that I haven't really been following my plan super effectively. So here I realized that Breloom doesn't outspeed anything else on his team, so there's no point for me to keep it around. I have to start thinking of the long game at this point, and the fact that he hasn't brought in his Azelf yet is actually very scary to me, because it's actually leading me to believe that it might be Scarf too. I don't know why, I just have a hunch that this thing might be Scarfed if it's just sitting in the back not doing anything, because it does have very good offense. Base 125 in both attack and special attack means that it's a pretty good Scarfer. It's not a very likely Scarfer because the most common set is just like the lead, like Stealth Rock's Taunt Explosion thing or whatever. But I've seen a Scarf Azelf do enough work to be pretty afraid of it at this point. So I realized Breloom's not going to do anything, and calc the damage and realized that if I Mach Punch, sack off Breloom, and then go into Scizor here, Bullet Punch will kill 100% of the time because he's under 70% or something. If he switches into Azelf, that's good because I'm pretty sure a Bullet Punch will 2-hit KO. But after calculating it a little bit more, I actually realized that a U-turn was a better play here, because if he did double into Azelf, it allows me to go into Nidoking and get a Sucker Punch off and kill it, no matter what set it is. If it's Nasty Plot, then I'm actually in a little bit of trouble here, I guess, but he's Scarf, so he does nothing to me with Psycho Cut, and Scizor gets another kill, and I get to double into Nidoking. So it's 2-on-1, and he brings in Azelf, and the reason I'm taking so long on each of these turns is because this is how it was in the actual battle, so I wanted to kind of replicate that a little bit. So I have seen nothing from this Azelf. I'm assuming that it's probably not the Focus Sash set if he was saving it for the end of the game. So at this point, I'm assuming that it's a Scarf set. I can't really think of a move that it could lock itself into that would kill both Scizor and Nidoking in one hit. So I'm actually afraid that it could be a Focus Sash Nasty Plot set that just has like Psyshock and HP Fire or something. So I could lock myself into Sludge Wave and 2-hit KO this Azelf, but if it's Scarfed and goes for I forget what I calced, but there was something I was very afraid of it going for when I was Scarfed, so I decided to lock myself into Sucker Punch here. Get a very good amount of damage off. It goes for Psyshock and Okos, obviously, and I just decided to bring in Scizor here and clean up. Very, very happy that I was able to pull out a 1-0 victory against the Darkrais. I'm very happy that I finally didn't choke a damn game, because doing these post-comms lately has been a little painful, because I just see all these plays in post-comm and I'm just like, why didn't I do that during the actual battle? So I'm glad that I was able to finally pull that out in a real game situation here. I want to give a huge shout out to my opponent because he put up a hell of a game. I don't actually know if he has anything on his YouTube channel right now, to be honest. But if he does, I will link it down in the description below and stuff. And actually, 1 second. Alright, sorry about that. I wanted to switch over to this. I'm trying a couple new things this week, so please let me know in the comments if you like them. I'm trying to build a separate team builder this week because it ran for a lot longer than I expected, and I'm going to try to do this at the end of my battles from now on and post the screen cap of my league page, just in case you guys aren't checking it out. But this is how my team has done so far this season. Scizor got a nice boost this week with 2 kills. I'm really glad that I brought all the priority that I brought this week. It was something that pun not intended until I thought about it, but it was something that I prioritized in my draft, because I've seen that having a lot of speed on your team is important because it allows you to dish out a lot of damage, but having priority on your team is arguably more important because it allows you to break the normal conventions of the speed tier, I guess, and stuff that shouldn't outspeed and do a lot of damage suddenly does outspeed and does a lot of damage, especially since a lot of my priority on my team has Technician, which is a nice little treat, I guess. But yeah, I just wanted to post this real quick and kind of talk over it while I finished up my thoughts for the week. Great battle. MDSMVP is a really good battler. That's why he was 6-3 going into this week. His team's really scary, and I'm, in hindsight, mad that I prepared for Weavile so much, but I can't really say that I'm mad that I prepared for Weavile, because I would have been a lot more upset if he brought Weavile and I was like, oh, I didn't think that was coming, because that would have been really dumb of me. So good on him, I guess, to not bring Weavile, knowing that I had a lot of answers to it, but I'm upset that I didn't get to use my answers, I guess. Next week we are playing the Toronto Star Raptors, coached by Fluka. He appointed me his rival during the draft, so it'll be interesting to see how that battle goes, I guess. A little bummed I messed that up, but whatever. I will see you guys next week. Have a good one. Bye.